What connects the flashing lights and staged mayhem of contemporary wrestling to the blood-soaked sands of the Roman Colosseum, where gladiators battled for their lives? Does it tell us something timeless about human nature, struggle, and the stories we tell ourselves? Or is it merely entertainment? We'll look at the history of wrestling, its ancient beginnings, and how it developed into the spectacular event it is today, a reflection of the cultures and societies it has impacted. Wrestling is more than just a sport. The origins of wrestling, a tradition shared by all people. One of the earliest forms of fighting was wrestling, which predates the Colosseum. Consider Sumer more than 4,000 years ago. Archaeologists discovered images of two guys in a grappling pose on their clay tablets. Wrestling was a test of survival, strength, and stamina, not merely a recreational activity. Paintings from Beni Hassan's tomb in ancient Egypt depict hundreds of wrestling moves. This was training for warriors, a means of being ready for the unpredictable nature of combat. And it wasn't simply for fun. There were variations of wrestling in almost every culture, and it was a global language of survival. But wrestling was elevated to a new level by the Greeks. One of the main tenets of the Olympic Games was pale. Here, strategy and brute force collided. Wrestling was viewed as a means of achieving mental and physical perfection. Competitors spent years honing skills such as the strangle and the tripping hold. It was an art form, not just a matter of using force. The Greeks saw wrestling as a manifestation of their values of self-control, intelligence, and physical might. However, wrestling had philosophical overtones and was more than just a sport. The renowned philosopher and wrestler Plato maintained that the techniques acquired on the mat were equally as significant as those gained in the classroom. He saw wrestling as a metaphor for life, a challenge, a test, and eventually a means of development. Rome, from athletics to extravaganza, wrestling made its way into Roman arenas as the city-state gained strength. However, the Greeks' noble aspirations did not satisfy the Romans. They were spectacle-hungry, and wrestling became more vicious. Gladiators were compelled to compete in life-or-death wrestling battles. They were frequently slaves or prisoners of war. These brutal battles took place in Rome's magnificent amphitheater, the Colosseum. Wrestling became more about entertainment and survival than it was about skill. The audience adored it. Their applause reverberated while combatants fought, their outcomes frequently decided by an emperor's thumbs up or thumbs down signal. As a means of amusement and influence over the populace, wrestling evolved into a political power tool. However, wrestling's cultural significance persisted despite the brutality. It was still a strategic and endurance test. Later, wrestling styles throughout Europe were impacted by the methods that Roman soldiers had learned. In the Middle Ages and later, wrestling changed rather than died with the fall of the Roman Empire. In Europe during the Middle Ages, it gained popularity as a recreational activity. Catch wrestling, a rough-and-tumble style that permitted grips, locks, and submissions, developed in England. Greco-Roman wrestling in France, meanwhile, placed a strong emphasis on throws and upper-body power. In various regions of the world, wrestling also acquired cultural and ceremonial significance. In Japan, sumo wrestling became a spiritual activity, merging sport with Shinto rites. Wrestlers were viewed as representations of strength and purity, representing the virtues of self-control and deference. Turkish oil wrestling became a display of endurance in the Middle East. Under the blazing sun, wrestlers fought for hours while slathered in olive oil. Their expertise and patience paralleled the resilience required in their wandering life. The origin of entertainment in the modern era, wrestling, the sport of wrestling. Wrestling underwent another change as the world became more industrialized. Wrestling gained popularity in fairs and carnivals during the 19th century. Locals were challenged to matches by traveling shows wrestlers, who offered monetary prizes to the winner. Promoters saw the financial possibilities right away. They elevated wrestling from a sport to entertainment. By introducing predetermined results and intense rivalries, professional wrestling was born out of this change. Matches became tales of heroes versus villains, good versus evil, and more than simply ability. By the early 1900s, professional wrestling had become popular all across the world. It became well known in the US because of performers like Frank Gotch, whose technical prowess attracted large audiences. When wrestling first appeared on television, viewers were exposed to the drama and charm of figures like Gorgeous George, whose flashy presence transformed the sport. The current global phenomenon of wrestling, the wrestling industry, is worth billions of dollars now. It has reached a worldwide level thanks to organizations like NJPW, AEW, and WWE. Wrestlers are now storytellers, stunt artists, and performers, in addition to being athletes. However, contemporary wrestling hasn't forgotten its historical roots. The spectacle, the competitiveness, and the drama are still there. Today's wrestlers put in a lot of training to hone their skills, just like their ancient Greek counterparts. Additionally, the audience's response still determines the show's success, much like in the Roman Colosseum. Today, however, wrestling is much more than just amusement. It honors the human need for connection, hardship, and success while celebrating athleticism and narrative. Roman gladiators, Japanese rikishi, or WWE superstars are just a few examples of how wrestling is still evolving while paying respect to its history. Wrestling is a mirror of who we are, not just a sport or a performance. It narrates a tale of human hardships, aspirations, and passion for spectacle, from the ancient sands of Olympia to the dazzling lights of Madison Square Garden, thank you for watching. And until we meet again,